Emma had always thought of her life as simple but full. 8 years of marriage with Daniel had built a routine that felt safe, even comforting. Their home was a small, sunlit house in the suburbs of Boston, filled with the quiet hum of ordinary life, morning coffee on the porch, laughter over breakfast, the small exchanges that made up their daily world. Daniel worked long hours at his law firm, often late into the evening, while Emma spent her days at the bookstore nearby. Surrounded by the smell of old pages and the soft shuffle of customers, she loved the life they had, the predictability, the sense of security. Or at least, she thought she did. It was on a Friday evening, with Daniel unexpectedly caught up at work, that everything began to shift. Emma had agreed to attend a company dinner in his place, an event she would normally have avoided, preferring quiet evenings at home. But she had smiled politely when the invitation arrived, telling herself it would be nothing more than small talk, the kind of polite conversation that filled empty hours. She wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, just enough to feel presentable. The dinner hall buzzed with chatter, laughter echoing off the high ceilings, waiters moving swiftly between tables. Emma found a quiet corner and sipped her water, scanning the room with mild curiosity, feeling both out of place and intrigued. Then, almost as if drawn by some invisible thread, Mark appeared. Mark was one of Daniel's colleagues, someone Emma had met only briefly at office parties and casual gatherings. He carried himself with a calm confidence, his eyes meeting hers with a peculiar intensity that made her heart flutter slightly. "Emma," he said, his voice low but deliberate, "can I speak with you for a moment?" She nodded, curiosity mixing with a sudden nervousness. He led her to a quieter corner, away from the hum of the party. The noise faded behind them, leaving only the soft scrape of chairs and murmurs of conversation. Emma tilted her head slightly, waiting, unsure of what to expect. I don't know how to say this," Mark began, running a hand through his hair as if to gather courage. "It's not really my place, but I think you should know something." Something about Daniel. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Something about Daniel. She had never imagined that there might be a secret, something unsaid in the life they shared. She forced a smile, trying to keep her voice steady. "What do you mean?" Mark looked around, his eyes scanning the room as if the walls themselves might listen. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "The way he talks about you at work, it's different. There's more behind it than you think." Her breath caught in her throat. She felt a jolt of confusion and a flicker of unease. More behind it. What could he mean? Daniel always seemed so grounded, so sure of his life and of her. Emma tried to read Mark's expression, hoping for clarity, but found only a strange mixture of concern and hesitation. "More behind it?" she asked again, her voice barely audible. Mark nodded slowly. "I've worked with him for years, Emma, and I've never seen him like this. He cares about you more than anyone really knows. But there's something he's struggling with. Something he hasn't shared." Emma's mind raced. Struggling? Hidden feelings. She felt a sudden mix of panic and curiosity. She had expected a polite dinner, small talk, maybe a few compliments, but this felt serious. It felt like a door had been opened that she didn't know existed. She wanted to ask questions, to understand, but the words lodged in her throat. Mark seemed to sense her hesitation. He reached out, touching her arm lightly, a gesture meant to reassure rather than intrude. "I didn't mean to upset you," he said quickly. "I just thought you should hear it from someone who sees it clearly. Daniel, he's torn, Emma. He's afraid of something, and it's not you. I promise you that." Emma's chest tightened. Afraid? What could he be afraid of? She searched Mark's eyes, desperate for answers, but there was nothing more he could say. I don't understand," she whispered. "I know," Mark replied gently. "It's complicated. But trust me when I say this. He loves you more than you realize. Sometimes love can be heavy, and he's carrying that weight alone." Emma nodded slowly, though she still felt a swirl of emotions, confusion, curiosity, a hint of fear. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel relief, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. She thanked him softly, and he offered a small, knowing smile before moving back into the crowd, Left alone, Emma felt the room close in around her. The laughter and music now seemed distant, almost unreal, as if she were seeing it through a veil. Her mind raced with questions. What was Daniel hiding? Why hadn't he told her? Was it something about his work? Or something about them, their life together? Every small memory of their years together seemed suddenly fragile, and she felt a strange unease settle over her heart. She tried to shake it off as she returned to the main hall, forcing herself to smile at acquaintances and nod politely to passing colleagues. But even as she laughed at light conversation, Mark's words echoed louder in her mind. There's more behind it than you think. He's torn. Emma couldn't deny the truth of what she felt, a sudden uncertainty about everything she had taken for granted. Her life, once steady and predictable, now seemed layered with questions she wasn't ready to answer. She wondered fleetingly, if this was how love always was, beautiful, yes, but sometimes shadowed by the things left unsaid, the fears carefully hidden, the burdens carried alone by the time she returned home that night. Daniel was still at the office, and the house was quiet. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, staring out at the dimly lit street. The calm of their neighborhood, the familiar view of houses lined in neat rows, felt suddenly strange, almost foreign. She thought of Mark's warning again, trying to interpret it, to find some sense of what lay ahead, and in the silence she realized that nothing about her life would feel the same again. A single conversation, quiet, careful, unassuming, had shifted something deep inside her. Emma didn't know what Daniel had been hiding or why, but she knew one thing. She had to find out for the first time in years. She felt a tension she couldn't ignore, a need to see beneath the surface of her own life, beneath the steady routine of her marriage, beneath the calm exterior Daniel always presented. Something had changed, and it had begun with one simple, startling truth whispered in a quiet corner of a crowded room. Her evening ended with her staring at the ceiling, heart racing, mind churning. She wasn't sure what the next day would bring or if she would find the answers she sought, but she knew with absolute clarity that her life and her understanding of Daniel would never be the same again. The morning after the dinner, Emma couldn't shake Mark's words from her mind. She went through her usual routine, making coffee, feeding the cat, opening the bookstore, but everything felt different. The sunlight streaming through the window didn't feel warm and comforting anymore. It felt sharp, highlighting the questions she hadn't dared to ask. Mark's words echoed again and again. The way he talks about you at work, there's more behind it than you think. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, that Daniel loved her as he always had, and that maybe Mark had just meant to be polite. But the seed of doubt had already taken root. Every interaction she had that morning seemed tinted with suspicion. She noticed the way Daniel always looked at her over breakfast, a careful tone in his voice when he asked how her day would go. Could he have been hiding something all this time without her realizing it? By midday, she found herself wandering near the cafe where she often went after work. She hadn't planned to meet anyone, but fate seemed to intervene. There was Mark leaning casually against the window, holding a coffee cup. He spotted her immediately and gestured her over. Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to avoid him, to forget the unsettling conversation. But curiosity and something deeper, a desire to understand, pulled her forward. She approached her heart a little faster than usual. "Emma," Mark said. His voice quieter this time, more personal, as if he could see straight into her thoughts. "I didn't mean to shake you the other night. I felt you should know, because I can see it matters to you." Emma nodded, unsure of what to say. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, her mind racing. "I still don't understand," she admitted. "What do you mean by more behind it? Is it something bad?" Mark shook his head. "No, nothing bad. It's just complicated. Daniel cares about you so much, Emma, more than most people can see. But he's torn inside and he's afraid. He wants to do everything right, to give you the life you deserve. But sometimes he struggles with expressing it. That's all I meant." Emma blinked, trying to process it. Struggles, fears. It sounded serious, But it wasn't something malicious. It wasn't a betrayal or a secret affair. It was something heavier, something she hadn't considered before, the possibility that love could be strong but fragile, burdened by worry and fear. Afraid of what? She asked softly. Her voice betrayed her curiosity, but also the edge of anxiety. Mark hesitated. Afraid of losing you? Afraid that in trying to protect everything you've built together, he might make mistakes that hurt the two of you. It's not something he talks about. He keeps it locked inside. The days that followed were restless for Emma. She went through her usual routines, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every glance at Daniel, every word he spoke, carried a weight she hadn't noticed before. She watched him closely, noticing subtle changes, how he lingered at the doorway before leaving for work, the way he sometimes stared out the window with a faraway look, the small sighs he let out when he thought no one was watching. Daniel had always seemed steady and confident, but now Emma saw traces of tension, hesitation, and something she couldn't yet name. She tried to approach him casually, letting conversation flow naturally during breakfast, but each answer seemed measured, distant. Her heart ached with both concern and curiosity. She wanted to reach him to understand what he was carrying, but she didn't know how to start. Mark's words haunted her. He's torn. He's afraid. He loves you. Those words seemed simple at first, but now they resonated like a warning bell she couldn't ignore. By the end of the week, Emma could no longer hold back. She decided she had to confront the uncertainty, to gently pull Daniel out of the silence he had wrapped around himself. That evening, she waited until dinner was finished, the house quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock. Daniel sat across from her, rubbing his temples and glancing at the window as if trying to gather thoughts. Emma took a deep breath and spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Daniel, is there something you've been keeping from me?" He froze. For a moment, he looked like a man caught off guard, and then he set his fork down slowly. His eyes met hers, searching, hesitant. And she saw something she had never noticed before. Flicker of guilt, maybe, or fear, or both. Emma's heart pounded. She wasn't asking because she suspected betrayal or dishonesty. She was asking because she wanted to bridge the distance she felt growing between them. Daniel shook his head lightly, forcing a laugh. "No, nothing like that. Why would you even ask?" Emma studied him closely. His hesitation was faint, but undeniable. She wanted to press further, to reach through the barrier he had built around his emotions. But something in her told her to tread carefully. She softened her tone. I feel like there's something you're carrying alone, and I want to share it with you if you'll let me." Daniel's eyes dropped to his hands. For a long moment, he said nothing. Emma waited, sensing that this silence held more truth than words ever could. She realized that sometimes the deepest emotions weren't spoken immediately. They were felt in quiet pauses, in subtle gestures, in the unspoken tension that hung in the air. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I've been offered a transfer to New York. It's a big opportunity for me, something I've worked toward for years. But I've been afraid to tell you because I know how much you love this place, our home, your bookstore, everything we've built here together. I didn't want to disrupt your life or make you feel like you had to give up something you love for me." Emma blinked, her mind racing to catch up. So this was the secret. Not infidelity, not betrayal, not deception. Just fear, a fear rooted in love and respect, a desire to protect her happiness even at the cost of his own. Her chest tightened, relief washing over her, but also a pang of sadness for the quiet struggle he had endured alone. "Daniel," she whispered, reaching for his hand across the table. "You didn't need to carry that by yourself. We can face it together. I don't want comfort without why I want you. I want us to take this step together, even if it's hard. We'll figure it out." He looked up, a mixture of surprise and relief in his eyes. For the first time in days, a genuine smile broke through his tired expression. He squeezed her hand as if testing the reality of her words, and Emma felt the tension between them begin to ease. The barrier that had grown over the week, fueled by uncertainty and unspoken fears, started to crumble over the next few days. Their conversations became more open, more honest. Daniel shared his worries about leaving Boston, about starting over in a new city, about the fear of losing the rhythm of their life. Emma shared her own concerns about the bookstore, about their neighborhood, about how change could affect her sense of stability. They talked late into the evenings, sipping tea, sitting on the porch, sometimes in silence, sometimes in laughter. Each conversation brought them closer, not just as husband and wife, but as partners facing the unknown together. Emma noticed subtle changes in Daniel, too. The way he lingered a little longer in the mornings, how he brushed her hair from her face with a gentleness she hadn't seen in months. The quiet reassurances he offered when she expressed doubts. She realized that the fear he had carried alone had been a sign of deep love. A love that sometimes weighed heavier than comfort or routine. It was not just affectionate, it was commitment, responsibility, and devotion. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Daniel turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "I've been so afraid of making the wrong choice, of upsetting the life we've built. But seeing how you're willing to face it with me, it makes me feel braver than I have in months. I want this step, Emma, and I want you by my side." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. She felt the emotion rise inside her, a mix of love, relief, and admiration. Here was a man who loved deeply, whose fear was born of care, and whose courage now matched her own. She reached out, taking his hand firmly in hers. "We'll face it together. I don't care where we go, Daniel. I care that it's with you." That night they talked long after the lights were out, their voices soft and low, weaving through hopes, fears, and dreams. Emma realized that this closeness, this raw honesty, was something their marriage had needed all along. The unspoken struggles had kept them apart in small ways, but now, by facing the fear together, they were discovering a deeper connection. By the end of the week, Emma noticed a shift not just in Daniel, but in herself. She felt stronger, more confident, more willing to embrace change. The uncertainty that had once unsettled her now felt like a challenge they could face side by side. She understood that love was not just about comfort or predictability, it was about vulnerability, trust, and courage. And through it all, she carried a quiet gratitude for Mark. His words had been the spark that broke the surface of silence. That stirred the awareness she needed to act. Without his insight, she might have continued unaware of the weight Daniel carried alone, unaware of the fears that had shaped his decisions and tempered his love. Emma went to bed that night with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. The house was quiet, Daniel asleep beside her, the shadows of the room softened by moonlight. She thought about the journey ahead, New York, new opportunities, new challenges, but now she didn't feel fear. She felt anticipation, excitement, and a renewed sense of partnership. They were in this together, stronger for having faced the hidden struggles, stronger for having shared the truth. And somewhere deep inside, Emma knew that the days ahead would bring more tests, more choices, more moments that would challenge their love. But she also knew something even more important. They had learned to face uncertainty together, to trust each other through fear, and to let love guide them through change. The nights no longer felt heavy with unspoken tension. Instead, they were filled with quiet understanding, with gentle touches, and with the knowledge that sometimes the deepest bonds are forged not in comfort, but in courage, the courage to face what is hidden, the courage to share, and the courage to trust completely. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt the weight lift, replaced by hope. She had taken the first steps toward bridging the silent gap between them. And in doing so, she realized that their love was far more resilient than she had imagined. Whatever challenges awaited, she knew they would meet them together, with honesty, with compassion, and with a love that had been tested and had emerged stronger than before. By the time the weekend arrived, Emma felt a mixture of anticipation and nervous excitement. The previous days had been filled with cautious conversations and quiet revelations, but she sensed that a real turning point was near. Daniel had been more open with her, yet she knew there was still something he hadn't fully shared. She could see it in his eyes, the way he paused at certain moments, as if weighing words before they left his lips. Emma felt ready more than ever to meet him halfway and face whatever truth lay behind that hesitation. Saturday morning began with sunlight spilling into the kitchen. Emma brewed coffee and glanced at the clock, wondering if Daniel had planned to work from home. Moments later, she heard his footsteps on the stairs, light but steady. He appeared in the doorway, holding a folder, looking slightly tense but determined. Emma's heart skipped. There was a seriousness in his expression that made her pulse quicken, not fear, not dread, but the electric anticipation of honesty about to be shared. "Emma," Daniel began, his voice careful, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said earlier, but I wasn't sure how." Emma gestured for him to sit, her own nerves tightening in response. "It's okay. We can face it together." He sank into the chair, running a hand through his hair as he exhaled slowly. "It's the transfer. New York. The opportunity is real, bigger than anything I've had before. But it's not just about the job. It's about us, about our life here, everything we've built. I didn't want to tell you too soon because I was afraid. Afraid that it might upset our balance, that you'd feel torn, that it might feel like I'm asking too much." Emma reached out and took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "Daniel, we've faced challenges before. We've built this life together and we've made choices side by side. This doesn't scare me. I want us to take this step together. I want to be there for you wherever it takes us." His eyes softened, visible relief breaking through the tension he'd carried. "I've been holding this alone for weeks," he admitted. "Even talking to Mark made me realize I needed to share it with you, that I couldn't carry the fear of losing you by myself. I've always wanted to protect you from worry, but in doing so, only created distance." Emma squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his confession. She understood then that Daniel's struggle hadn't been about doubt in their marriage, had been about love so deep it became almost overwhelming. His fear wasn't of losing her to another person or to circumstances, but of losing the life they cherished, the sense of balance and stability they had created together. It was a fear rooted in care, devotion, and the desire to do everything right. "Daniel," she said softly, "I love our life, yes, but I love you more than I love the routine or comfort. We can rebuild, adjust, and grow. I don't need everything to stay the same. I just need you. That's what matters." He looked at her, eyes glistening slightly, and for the first time in days, Emma felt the full weight of his vulnerability. Daniel, the man who always seemed confident and composed, was revealing a part of himself he had kept hidden. It was not a weakness. It was courage in its quietest form, the courage to admit fear, to open his heart fully, and to trust her with the truth. They spent the afternoon talking, planning, imagining what their life in New York could be. They discussed apartments, neighborhoods, and how Emma could continue her bookstore work in a new city. Every detail they explored, every challenge they discussed, seemed to draw them closer together. The conversation was filled with laughter, anticipation, and occasional moments of silence where words were unnecessary. They were simply together, facing the unknown side by side, and Emma felt a profound sense of connection that she hadn't realized was missing before. As evening fell, Daniel suggested a walk. They strolled through their quiet neighborhood, the fading sunlight casting warm shades across the streets. For Emma, every step felt like a new beginning. She noticed small things, the way Daniel reached for her hand naturally, the gentle smiles exchanged with neighbors, the familiar hum of their surroundings. Everything felt charged with significance. As if the ordinary had transformed into something extraordinary, they stopped at the park near their house, where the trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. Daniel pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I was so afraid," he whispered, "that telling you might change everything. But now I realize it changes nothing except that we understand each other better. You make me braver than I ever thought I could be." Emma smiled, feeling tears prick the corners of her eyes. "And you make me stronger. Stronger to face change, to face life's uncertainties, to trust that love can hold us through anything." In that moment, the air between them felt charged with quiet triumph. Triumph not of victory over external challenges, but of intimacy, trust, and honesty. Emma realized that the unspoken fears, the hesitation, and the silent struggles had actually brought them closer. What had once threatened to create distance had instead created an opportunity for understanding and deeper connection. That night, they returned home hand in hand, and the house felt different not because it had changed, but because they had changed within it. The tension that had hung over them lifted, replaced by warmth, closeness, and a shared sense of purpose. They spent hours talking quietly in the living room, planning, dreaming, and sometimes simply holding each other in silence. Every shared thought, every whispered word, strengthened the bond they had, reminding them that love was not about perfection, but about the courage to face fears together. In the days that followed, preparations for the move became a shared adventure. They packed boxes, sorted belongings, and made decisions together. Emma realized how much she had underestimated the strength that came from facing challenges as a team. Daniel, too, seemed lighter, more at peace, and more willing to share both his hopes and his fears openly. Their love had been tested subtly but profoundly, and the experience had revealed its resilience. One evening, as they stood in the nearly empty living room, looking around at the remnants of their old life, Daniel turned to Emma. "I want you to know," he said, "that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. You've reminded me that life isn't about avoiding fear, it's about sharing it and trusting that love is strong enough to carry us." Emma felt a rush of emotion. She understood now that the greatest change in their life wasn't the move or the job or the city. It was the transformation in their marriage, the deepened trust, the unspoken bond strengthened by honesty, and the courage to embrace uncertainty together. As they stood there, arms entwined, Emma felt a quiet joy settle over her. The fear that had lingered for days, the tension that had kept her awake at night, had finally dissolved. She realized that love, when nurtured with patience and understanding, could survive doubt, fear, and even the weight of the unknown. It could not only endure it, could flourish by the time they went to bed that night. The house was calm, familiar, yet infused with a renewed sense of hope. Emma lay beside Daniel, feeling his steady breath, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The conversation that had begun with a colleague's gentle warning had ultimately led to a revelation far greater than either of them could have imagined: the realization that love, honesty, and courage were stronger than fear, and that sharing burdens made them lighter. And as Emma closed her eyes, she knew this truth would stay with her. Life would change. Circumstances would shift, but their love tested, challenged, and strengthened would endure. That understanding, more than anything else, had changed everything.